Hey everyone, Brian with Mortgage Atlanta, and welcome to another Mortgage Minute. I'm here with my good friend Ivan Savant of the Ivan Savant team, Berkshire Hathaway. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we were just talking, and we did a video just a second ago on multiple offers, and we got to talking a little bit about appraisal contingencies and what that means. And we hit on it briefly, but we want to elaborate it here in this video. Let's talk about what happens when you're under contract, let's say for $250,000,
Okay.
and the house appraises for $240,000. What happens, and what's in the contract that protects the buyer?
Well, when that scenario happens, there are options for both parties. Options for sellers, options for buyers. Of course, the buyer's first option will be always to ask the seller to reduce the price.
And there's an appraisal contingency in the contract that says if the house doesn't appraise during this period of time frame, that you got the right to go back and ask the seller for a reduction in sales price.
That is correct.
And then the seller has the right to
Say no.
or say yes.
Say yes. Or the seller may approach the buyer and ask them to meet them halfway or whatever that point is in between, whether the seller comes down some value on his side and the buyer comes up with some cash from his side.
And so basically it opens, I don't want to say it opens another round of negotiations, but the buyer and seller can come to a mutual understanding in the middle. They can drop all the way down. The buyer can say, the seller can say no, and the buyer can still say yes. There's lots of different options that can happen in that scenario.
Correct.
The thing that's most important is that you're protected.
Yes.
If you don't have the extra, in that scenario, $10,000 to bring, you don't have to, and you're able to back out of the contract.
Right.
And in some scenarios, we can actually change your financing a little bit and still get you the property, right? So let's say in the scenario we just talked about, you're buying a house for $250,000 and you're putting down, let's say, $100,000. Is that really going to affect my position on the mortgage? Not very much. So in reality, that may not really affect your bottom line, your net, or anything like that. And you may still be able to proceed as a buyer without having any effect of it at all, except for why not just ask the seller?
Correct.
Right? It doesn't hurt to ask.
Correct.
Right? And so sometimes we ask, sometimes we don't ask and all that kind of stuff, but I always say, go ahead and ask for the reduction.
Yes, and that's depending on the scenario, because one of the things that happens a lot is when the appraisal is done, we are already 2 to 3 weeks into the contract, and the mindsets of the buyer and the seller, because buyer's thinking he's getting the house and seller's thinking he's selling the house, so they are packing their boxes and all, and when that thing hits, it puts pressure on both parties. So having a mutual understanding is very important. Of course, from the buyer's side, the realtor will be protecting the buyer, and the seller's side, the listing agent will be looking for the best interest in the seller. But there are some more options available through lender, whether it's lender credit that lenders can offer, and also if you reduce the down payment and use that cash towards paying for the difference. Those are the options that are out there that people do not talk about, because again, hiring a professional versus hiring somebody that's doing part-time.
And then, the other thing that we also don't talk about is we can dispute the appraisal. If you don't think that value is correct, you have the right to dispute the appraisal and go back to it. The challenge you have is you have to present concrete evidence to the appraiser to get them to change their value. And that's not always difficult, but sometimes it's challenging. And we ask the seller to provide comps that support the value, support the list price, and everything like that. And sometimes we're able to get the value up, sometimes we're not, and then back to negotiating.
That is absolutely correct. And again, the end game is for both parties to get to the closing table happy. Yes.
Yeah. So you've heard from us, two professionals in the mortgage and real estate industry, what to do when the house doesn't appraise. Give us a call if you have a question, or if you've got a scenario, we'd be happy to help. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.